The most believable alien encounter, the Skinwalker Ranch story.
Some call this location the most paranormal location on the planet.
Okay.
Others call this whole thing just a big hoax. But what is undeniably true, and frankly what makes this case so much more interesting, is that unlike the vast majority of paranormal stories and claims, this case was put to an enormous amount of scientific scrutiny. In fact, there was a decade-long study done on this case.
By the way, I've not seen a dime of anything to do with Skinwalker Ranch, by the way. I don't know what is going to be in this.
Where
PhDs
and scientists converged on this one location and basically around the clock studied, all these claims of the paranormal that was happening in the area. And after a decade of research, the findings are pretty mind-blowing. And the case that I'm referring to is none other than the very famous Skinwalker Ranch. So the too long didn't read version of this story is you have a family that purchases a ranch out in Utah, and as soon as they move in, they start noticing some pretty bizarre things around their property. Everything from, some of their livestock going missing or being harmed. They have strange sightings in the woods of creatures and lights in the sky. They eventually report it to the news, and that news story gets picked up by a couple of other outlets, and a billionaire who is obsessed with researching the paranormal sees this story. He buys the property and installs an entire team of scientists and researchers to basically try to figure out what was happening at this ranch. And they spend 10 years studying this ranch. The outcome is, well, turns out some strange things really were happening there. Before we get started, if this type of content appeals to you, the kind of strange, dark, mysterious content delivered in a story format, well, if that appeals to you, that's what my channel's all about. And I post 3 to 4 times a week.
Pretty much so if families bought a ranch,
please gently ransack the like button and then turn on all notifications so you can get all of my content every time I upload.
We're not really got into it yet.
All right, on with the story. In the northeastern corner of Utah lies a 500-acre plot of land. It's all desert, where a ranch sits, and that is Skinwalker Ranch. It was built in the late 1800s, early 1900s, and it was actually built on a piece of land that had apparently been cursed. Prior to its construction, the Navajo tribe had...
Wait. Was Skinwalker Ranch called Skinwalker Ranch before the weird stuff started happening? Because that's a weird, creepy name in itself, bro. Skinwalker Ranch? If I was buying a ranch and I seen Skinwalker Ranch, I'd probably double question buying that ranch. Oh no, it was called that afterwards.
Had a feud with the Utes Native American tribe. The Utes were selling off other Native Americans that they would capture. They would sell them into slavery to the United States. And so the Navajo, who had previously lived in the area where this ranch actually was built, they were forced off their land as the Utes came in and were rounding them up and selling them into slavery. And before the Navajo left that area, they cursed the land with what's called the Skinwalker curse. The idea was they were going to torment the Utes tribe for the hardships they had inflicted on the Navajo. The Skinwalker curse, legend has it, is this curse where these witches descend on the area and take the form or wear the skin of various predatory animals in the area, namely large wolves,
werewolves,
foxes. They inhabit those bodies and terrorize anybody in the cursed land. At some point, this ranch is actually built on the land that had apparently been cursed. It wasn't until many years later when owners of that ranch started seeing predatory animals doing some very strange things in and around their property that they did some research on the area, learned about this curse, and then before long, the nickname had stuck. In 1994, Terry and Gwen Sherman purchased Skinwalker Ranch. It had actually been abandoned by the previous owners for the last few years, so when they purchased it, they got it for way below market price. So they are just so excited to be moving in. They breed cattle, and so they...
Hey, this is what I'm saying, bro. Even selling houses, people need a list if that's haunted, man. There needs to be a section on the sale page where it's like haunted section. Any experiences, any weird stuff, you know what I mean? Because they think they're getting a deal. Boom, no, you're getting some haunted stuff, mate.
They had 500 acres to let their cattle free roam. It was like the dream purchase for this family. And so when they finally do move in, like the day they move in, they don't really care that, the grass is overgrown. It looks like things are kind of in disrepair. And in fact, when they go into the homestead, like the actual house on the property, they were so excited about everything that they kind of overlooked some of the strange things that they immediately noticed about the property. They go inside and every window has a deadbolt on it. The inside and outside of every door in the house, not just the doors leading outside, doors leading between rooms had locks, the front and back side. They noticed these big pikes that were driven into the ground at the front door and back door of the property with massive chains stringing off of them, which looked like pretty powerful guard dogs had been there. They're thinking to themselves, well, this is a huge piece of property. Perhaps the previous owners are a little bit paranoid because they're kind of isolated. And so they didn't really raise a red flag when, to be honest, had I moved into a property where every single door and window had multiple locks on it, they had these big guard dogs, I'd probably ask a couple questions. But you know what? Terry and Gwen, they're just so excited about this purchase that, again, they kind of just overlook it. So on the day that they are moving in, Terry and Gwen have some family members over to help them offload trucks and move stuff into the homestead. And it's during this process, as they're moving things out of the truck into the house. And again, you got to remember that the house is situated like right in the middle of the property, and you can see in every direction basically unobstructed because it's basically open desert, with the exception of a couple areas that are, basically forests. And as they're offloading some of the stuff into the house, Terry looks out at one of these tree lines and he notices this huge wolf, or what looks like a wolf, pretty well off in the distance, kind of meandering its way over.
Mate, that's a panther, bro. That's massive.
Towards them. But it's far enough off that this is not enough to be totally worried about it. After all, Terry was a rancher and his family were fairly rugged. They carried weapons and they were used to, protecting their livestock from predators. So this was not a, oh my goodness, I can't believe a wolf is near us. It was more like, okay, let's make a note that there's a wolf walking towards us. And so Terry does, he tells his family, hey guys, just so you know, there's a wolf coming towards us right now. And the whole family is now standing near the truck and they're watching this wolf. And Terry recalled, as he's staring out watching this wolf that's kind of almost walking in like a snake, like a serpentine path towards them from hundreds of yards out. It's still quite a ways out. Terry notices that there was a fence that was out where this wolf is. And the fence was pretty big, and the spaces between posts were about 6 feet. When he had a good look at the wolf next to the fence, he could tell that the wolf was at least 6 feet long. And he was thinking, are my eyes playing a trick on me? Like, that's an enormous
That is massive.
wolf. That's the biggest wolf I've ever seen. But the wolf wasn't acting angry or aggressive. It was just kind of skulking its way towards them, very nonchalant, broad daylight. And at some point, Terry and the family, they're standing behind the truck, and Terry said that they all had this feeling that the wolf was not going to harm them. And the wolf got about 100 yards away, and Terry and his family are transfixed. And he even said he didn't understand why they weren't scared or why they weren't, running away or shooting at it or something, but they didn't. All of them are just standing there watching this wolf.
What, is it hypnotizing?
Massive. And the wolf is wagging its tail and acting like a domesticated dog. The wolf comes over and goes up near Terry's father, who was there helping unload some of the gear they had. And Terry's father just kind of reflexively reaches out to start petting. He's petting like up at his head level, this massive wolf. And the wolf just acts like a domesticated dog and kind of rubs against his hand.
Why do I feel like the wolf is hypnotizing the people, bro? Like they got no control of what they're doing right now.
And then starts walking away from them, just wagging its tail and not doing anything, not causing them any harm, not snarling, not growling, nothing. But just as nonchalantly as it walked over to them, it walks over to where they had a pen with a couple of cows and calves inside of this pen. And one of the calves had its head through the post that was keeping them in this cage, just kind of watching this wolf. And the wolf notices it and in an instant jumps over to this calf and immediately has the whole head of the calf in its jaws, just trying to rip it out of the cage.
What the fuck?
But it can't get it to squeeze through the cage. And so all of a sudden, you know, like Terry and his family are broken out of this weird trance, and Terry starts firing shots at the wolf. It strikes the wolf and has no impact. They run over, they start hitting it with the back end of an axe. They're trying to get this thing off of the calf, because their livestock, that was their livelihood. And you know, these are rugged people, and so they're trying to fight to save their property, to save their cows. And the wolf is just totally unaffected. It's not trying to attack Terry or his son that are trying to get rid of it. The wolf is just trying to attack the cow, but it won't let go. And finally, it just kind of gives up on the calf, starts kind of retreating. Terry ends up getting his rifle, a high-powered rifle, and takes a shot at the wolf one more time. But again, it just has no impact on the wolf. And the wolf just...
Yo, bro, has the wolf got like a bulletproof coat or something? Like, bro, what is the wolf rocking?
At some point, just as, I guess, bored, turns around and kind of trots off into the woods. After they kind of were brought out of that initial trance, that they remember this horrible smell that's like foul, almost chemical smell that just permeated the whole area after the wolf was there. Terry and his son, they decided to go track this wolf, because now there's this massive predator that's going to make owning cattle extremely difficult, and so they would have to go deal with this predator. And so instead of retreating into the house, they grab their weapons and they track the wolf that's now jogged off into the forest. And they make it to an area in the forest where the ground is very muddy and sodden. And Terry could easily make out these footprints that just suddenly stop. And they just couldn't make sense of it. And so they went back to the house and they told their family, like, we tracked it into the woods. There's no blood trail. There's nothing. It just walked in and vanished. So this is day one of being at this ranch, and they're all on edge now. The whole family is on edge. They really don't know what to make of that wolf. The sheer size of it, the fact that it was totally unaffected by being shot multiple times. You know, there's real concern over their own livelihood, because they keep cattle and they're only going to have more that are going to be out in these pens. And if there are wolves that are 3 times the size of a normal wolf that are walking around killing cattle.
Yo, the way you solve this, yeah, is around your ranch, you just put landmines. Because then if the wolf goes there, steps on it, boom.
It's a big problem if you own cattle.
God.
And so they're on edge, and they're all in a way trying almost not to talk about how crazy and how bizarre that encounter with the wolf was. They're just like, they're treating it like it's just a normal predator problem. Like, man, we gotta get those wolves, we gotta protect our cattle. But in the back of everybody's minds, they're like, something very strange is happening here.
Yeah, Gwen, she
was having some other very strange things that were happening to her that she was not tying to the wolf thing. She was just noticing a couple of distinct things that were happening to her that made her think that she actually had a very real, like, medical problem, that she had, like, you know, true memory issues. Because 2 things happened. One, in that first week, she had gone to the grocery store, and when she came back, she put the groceries away, and then she left to go to the other room. And when she came back, all the groceries were now back in the bags. And so for like 20 minutes, she's just sitting there like dumbfounded.
That would be trippy.
Did I put the groceries away? Same day, she goes to take a shower, and she hangs her towel in the bathroom, like anyone would, and she takes a shower. And then when she gets out, the towel's missing.
Oh.
And she's like, huh. She gets another towel and she towels off, and then she finds the towel hanging up in a closet on the other side of the house. And so between the groceries and the towel, she's like, is there something wrong with me? Am I like having a stroke? Am I having a medical issue here that I'm like literally losing my mind? And it wasn't until Terry actually had a similar experience that she started to wonder if this had to do with maybe that strangeness with the wolf, that maybe there's just something odd happening about this property. And it was Terry, in that first week, he had been digging holes for a new fence. And he had this big fence digging tool. It was about 70 pounds that he was using to dig the holes for the fence. And so he had taken a break after making a bunch of posts for this fence. He took a break, left his fence digging tool, you know, at the last place he had dug a post.
I know what's gonna happen. He's then gonna come back out and the wolf is on it digging. That's what's gonna happen, bro. The wolf is gonna be on the digger, bro.
And he went in to grab a bite to eat. came back out and his fence digger is missing. And
Who saw
initially
that?
he just goes into the house and he's like, hey, you know, to his wife, to his kids, like, did you guys move my fence digger? Like, do you know what happened to it? Like, where is it? It's not out there. And they're like, no, we've been in the house the whole time. I have no idea. And so they couldn't find it. And a week goes by and he's out patrolling his property looking for wolves. And in the tree, like well away
Don't tell
from
me
where
that's
he had
a
been
wolf.
digging the post before, in the tree, his fence digging tool that's 70 pounds is like 70 feet in the air,
What?
strung up in this tree. So Terry comes back to the house and he tells his family about
What?
the fence digging tool being in the tree. And that's when Gwen tells Terry about her experiences with the groceries going back in the bag and a towel being moved around the house. And everybody in the family starts to really start being scared. We can't explain what's happening on this property, and we're very isolated. And what's the deal with all these locks on all the doors? I mean, they're starting to feel really concerned. Following the fence digging tool being found, Terry started to notice lights on his property. Initially, because this was the first.
Yo, chat, this is why I like the way I live, bro. Because, chat, I know I'm renting houses right now, yeah? But the reason why I move so much is because the second I see a problem in the house, I can't be arsed and I'm moving. So, like, the second I even see something's missing or I got someone to worry about the house, I'm moving house, bro. I'm moving house. I'm getting out of this house and I'm moving house, bro. Even when I buy a new house, yeah, and I'm gonna move in there. If someone's up with that house, haunted in any way, I do not care. I'm putting on the market. I'm fucking moving. I don't care, bro. I'm moving. You know what I mean? Just, why do people wait? Why do people wait? Just move, bro. Just go.
Couple of weeks they're there, he would see lights way at the far end of his property.
Yeah, I'm
that
going.
looked like headlights, and
I'm
he
going.
would think someone must have made a wrong turn that wound up on my property. I mean, we're kind of out in the middle of nowhere.
Headlights, there's
and they'll
loads.
just leave. And so when he first started seeing these lights, that's what he assumed it was, just people making a wrong turn.
Good night, Joe.
But he started to see it so often that he wondered if people were illegally hunting on his property.
Some people are braver. Some people are braver. Are you calling me a pussy? I don't think I'm a pussy. I just think I'm smart. Sam. Kira. It's not being a pussy, it's being smart.
And so one night he sees these lights on his property and he goes out to investigate. In fact, he's angry. You know, he's had all these strange things happen. His family's on edge, you know, and now he's mad and he's going to take it out on this person who's illegally hunting on his property. And he starts charging out to these lights and he starts getting closer and closer and he starts to realize it's not making any sound. If this was like a truck, it's not making any sound. And we're in an area where I could totally hear that if it was a vehicle, and he can't hear anything. And as he gets closer and closer, the lights start retreating from him without making a sound and then float up into the sky and disappear. And Terry's like, what is going on here? The winter rolls around and it's a particularly brutal winter. And one night he couldn't account for one of his cows. And so he's out looking for this one stray cow and he searches his whole property and there's only one area that he hasn't searched, and it's that forest where that giant wolf had disappeared after marching in there, and they tracked it in there. And so he goes in there, and as soon as he gets to the tree line, he notices there's a bunch of footprints from what looks like a cow. And he's relieved because it's probably his. He follows it into the woods, and much like the wolf that had just disappeared in that muddy, like sodden area in the forest, in the same spot, the footprints that appeared to be this cow had also just, well, disappeared. And then over the course of the remainder of the winter, that would happen 4 more times. The animals would run away and just disappear without a trace. By the end of the winter, after all these animals have just mysteriously disappeared, Terry and his family, but Terry and...
Yo, I am so curious to see in this story, what's the scientific evidence? Because that's what he said. Because right now, I would just say there's a drug leak in the house. They're getting high. There's some in the ground. They're getting high. Like they're tripping out, bro, by something. You know what I mean? We've seen it before. Where there's something in the air in the house or something like that, and they're all tripping.
particular
no
has
spoilers, no
really
spoilers.
gone into full
No spoilers.
paranoia mode. He at night would just like stalk his own property, like hiding behind bushes with his weapon, and like hope to see what was taking his cattle.
They sound like they're going crazy.
And so one night, as he's doing another fruitless search around his property, he catches out of his periphery what looks like a kind of mass of something moving around in the trees near his property. And at this point, he was kind of obscured by some shrubs and some plants. And so he kind of crouched down and looked out at the tree line. And he sees in the tree line this like strange shape kind of moving about inside of the trees. And he would describe the mass as looking almost like a stealth fighter jet, but really small. And it was making no sound, and it was hovering about 20 feet off the ground. And he's
Yo, that's not an official picture though, is it? Because normally Ballers says official picture. Is that an official picture or not?
It was making no sound, and it was hovering about 20 feet off the ground. And he's crouched down, not making a sound, watching it. And it's just kind of like moving around the tree line, and it has these lights that it looks to be kind of scanning the ground. And it's just kind of moving around, it's shining these lights, these multicolored lights in the ground. And Terry moves a tiny bit to get a better angle on this thing. And he makes the tiniest of noises against the brush, just like a tiny little, barely audible sound.
What's gonna happen?
And this mass that's pretty far away, the lights immediately turn off, and it angles itself so it's facing directly at Terry. And Terry can feel it right away that it's heard this tiny little sound he's made, and now it's staring directly at Terry. And Terry's like terrified, and he's looking at this thing, wondering like, oh my God, like, is it gonna come take me? Like, what is this? Is this the thing that's been taking my livestock? And he's terrified, and he's staring at it, and it just flies away. By the spring of 1995, things have gotten really, really bad for Terry and his family. Now, not only are they losing livestock inexplicably, but they're showing up. The actual cows themselves are showing up back on their property, hours or days later, just kind of in random locations on the property, and they look like they've had surgery done, like precision cuts. And pieces of them are missing.
Hey, someone been stealing some meat, bro. Someone's been making some steak on the campfire, but taking the cows back so they don't get caught. Now, I know what you're doing.
Look like they've had surgery done, like
I know what
precision
you're doing.
cuts, and pieces of them are missing. And in addition, some very strange things are happening at the house.
Weird.
At night, they would see these entities walking around their property, these humanoid. They described them as having no expression, just walking around their property. And sometimes they would walk right up to the glass, put their hands on the glass and look in, but there was no face. And like Terry and his family, they had blinds down, and they would use the deadbolts on every single door and window. But they could hear them rapping at the glass, and they could hear them communicating.
What the fuck is that then? That's not it. That's not it. You're chatting shit, bro. That's not it. What the fuck is that? What the fuck is that? There's a whole ass fucking sci-fi alien, mate. What the fuck is that?
Single door and window, but they could hear them rapping at the glass, and they could hear them communicating in a language they didn't understand right outside of their house.
Are you mad?
And this became so regular that it was almost impossible to sleep. Terry's kids started performing very poorly in school because they weren't sleeping. Terry's wife, Gwen, she lost her job at the bank because she wasn't sleeping, and she was like delusional. They were all just at an absolute
Move
breaking
house.
point. Terry is now feeling totally disheartened. One night he's sitting on his porch with his rifle, and he notices out on the horizon a new phenomenon. He was used to seeing the lights on his property that would be off in the distance that would disappear, and he had previously seen that kind of like fighter jet thing that was scanning the area. Like, those were two types of lights he would see, but there was a new light he saw as he's sitting on his porch. It was almost like this orangey orb that appeared off in the distance. Since he had his rifle with a high-powered scope on it, he just lifts up his rifle and he looks through his high-powered scope, and he zooms in all the way, and he can see that this orb, he describes it as a portal. That as he's looking at it, it has almost like an oval shape to it, and even though it was nighttime, in the middle of the orange orb is this blue sky. It's as if he's looking through a portal into another world where it's broad daylight and there's a sky. And he doesn't know what to make of it, but he can see that a black figure is crawling out of this portal into his property, and it looks just like
Hey, yo, buddy, you're gonna need some good scientific reasons like this is going on or whatever. Because this sounds like some sci-fi movie right now, bro. This sounds like you're pitching a really good movie. But a movie, bro.
black entities that were kind of basically walking around his property at night. In addition to these
aliens,
figures that are crawling,
portals.
like imagine that scene from The Ring where the girl crawls out of the well. They're crawling out of this portal into his property and then scurrying away into the tree line. And he sees weird craft as well coming into his property through this portal, and then the portal shuts and disappears.
What?
Following this night with the orange portal, Terry started to notice blue orbs that he and his family would say were the worst and most terrifying thing of all of the things they experienced. And considering they had tall, featureless black humanoids peering in their windows, and
they have scientific evidence for this now. Mate, if they've got scientific evidence for this now, then that's not even a question. Like, aliens are on this planet. Like, I believe in aliens, but I don't think they've been to the planet yet. And if they did, it was way before, like, we was here. You know what I'm saying? I don't know, but if they got evidence for this, then they have. Why do people even question it?
rapping on their windows, that's saying something.
You think this is what they did?
A blue orb started showing up on their property, and the way they described it, Terry and his family, was whenever the orb came near you, it gave you this extreme sense of anxiety. It was almost like it was emitting this feeling that you automatically got, where suddenly you were unbelievably anxious and terrified of the blue orb. And then as soon as it left, you would, not be anxious anymore. And so one night he's sitting on his porch like he had begun doing, and he sees this orb show up on his property. And his 3 dogs are sitting with him that see the orb, and they start growling and barking. And so he lets his dogs go, thinking that maybe they can scare this thing off. And the dogs take off running towards this blue orb, and they chase it, and you can see the orb, Terry can see the orb that starts to kind of retreat. And he's thinking, oh my goodness, I finally won something. My attack dogs are going to scare this orb away.
No, motherfucker, your attack dogs are going to get sucked up into a portal, and then they're going to finally have pets on Alien World.
And they chase off into the woods.
The first dogs ever on Alien World.
The blue orb retreat into the woods. And then when he's thinking again that finally a little victory for us, he hears his dogs yelping. And he's too terrified to go check it out. And so he ends up going inside and locking the doors, locking the windows like they had been, and just kind of retreating. So the next day when...
Nah, fuck this guy, bro. You don't leave your dogs behind. Bro, listen, chat, I know when we watch like these horror videos and stuff like that, I say that I will leave everyone behind. The only thing I won't leave behind is my dog, bro. I will go and get my dog. I actually would go and get my dog.
The dogs haven't returned. Terry and his son, they go out looking for the dogs in the forest. And when they get out there, they get to a clearing and they find 3 stacks of ashes in like little burned out circles, as if there had been a fire previously in these 3 little spots. And it turned out it was the ashes of his 3 dogs that had gone into the woods. They had just been
That's
vaporized.
sad, bro.
Terry decides that it's time to leave, and he wants to sell the ranch. And so he puts the property up for sale and goes to a local news
Wait. Fair play. You got more balls than I have. It took you that long to decide to pull it up. Bro, the second I lost, or my wife was going crazy with the memory loss, and then my tool was in the tree, that's the second I would have put it up for sale, bro.
Outlet, and he tells them about the property up for sale and goes to a local news outlet, and he tells them about what's happening on his property. And as
are you stupid?
fate would have it, a billionaire by the name of Robert Bigelow, who had invested millions of dollars in standing up this scientific research team, this all-star team of PhDs, specifically to research what he described as high strangeness, which really is just paranormal. Basically, he was obsessed with the paranormal and wanted to investigate.
He's gonna buy it. Never mind. Okay, you're smarter than me. Bro, I thought that was a bad idea, telling the newspaper what's happening on your ranch. You try to sell it, yeah? Why would you tell people it's haunted? No one's gonna buy it. But now you know better than me, bro. The billionaire bought it.
Paranormal. And he had actually seen that fairly obscure story when he saw that it was up for sale Robert Bigelow, the billionaire, saw this great opportunity to buy the piece of property and actually make it the headquarters of his own scientific research team, not only to investigate what was happening on Skinwalker Ranch, but use it as kind of a hub to do other scientific research. So he purchases the ranch.
No, James, I'm saying people should report haunted so I don't buy a haunted place. But I ain't stupid. If my place is haunted, I ain't telling them. Like, I know I'm being a hypocrite right now, but I'm just thinking about myself, bro. Like, I want you to put it up so I don't buy your haunted place. But I ain't telling you, because I'm trying to get rid of my haunted place. I'm just looking out for myself, bro. I'm just looking out for myself.
Use it as kind of a hub to do other scientific research. So he purchases the ranch, and Terry actually, even though he did not want to spend any time at the ranch, on some level wanted to know what the research was going to show, because he was very curious, like, what is going on at this ranch that's been plaguing my family. So he offers to stay on as kind of like the ranch manager, because, you know, Robert Bigelow and his team are a bunch of scientists and business people. They don't have any experience on the ranch, and so they're happy to keep him. So Terry is still connected to the ranch, but at this point he's sold it to Robert Bigelow. So Robert
Wait. You're being haunted on the ranch. You sell the ranch and you're staying there as manager? Bro, what the, like... Bro, this ain't Stranger Things, my guy. Get out of there. This is real life, bro.
Bigelow's scientific team was called the National Institute for Discovery Science, or NIDS, N-I-D-S, NIDS for short. And Bigelow had actually built the team before purchasing Skinwalker Ranch. And what he went out and did is he recruited some of the most incredible scientists and PhDs he could possibly recruit, but he didn't want people that were interested in the paranormal. He wanted people that were inherently skeptical, so that if he was ever able to kind of prove the existence of high strangeness, that he would have credibility in doing that. And so he went out and found these incredibly skeptical and incredibly smart scientists and PhDs. I like that. And so they move into Skinwalker Ranch. And the first thing they do is they need to start doing testing.
I like that. I like when skeptical people are looking into it, because you know how people, when someone's heavily into the paranoid, ghosts and stuff and aliens, when people are too into it, they believe what they want to believe. Do you know what I'm saying, chat? So I'd rather hear a story from someone skeptical than not. Because the person that isn't, they're gonna wanna believe it. They're gonna so even a leaf falling from a tree, they might be like, "Ooh, alien." You know what I'm saying? So skeptical, I like that. Yeah. Hire them
to make sure that this whole
good idea,
all the stories about Skinwalker Ranch coming from Terry and his family were not just some grand illusion by the family that, you know, they could have just made it up. And so they get in there and they start running these tests. So that first,
yeah, like chat, for example, I'm open-minded, right? But like when it comes to ghosts, I'm kind of a skeptic, but I'm open-minded. You know what I'm saying? Like, I don't know exactly. It still scares the crap out of me, but I need to see it to believe it. So because you guys know that, if something genuinely does happen to me, you're more likely going to believe me. You know what I'm saying? Like you are. Like if I come to you tomorrow and say, yo, bro, fucking some clown just appeared from my attic and then disappeared, you're probably going to believe it. You know what I'm saying?
First year, as they're running these tests, which are largely things like, okay, let's check the environment and see if there aren't any, you know, plants that are giving off spores that could be hallucinogenic that they're breathing in. Let's check their water supply and make sure there wasn't something happening in their water supply. Let's do psychological assessments of the family. Let's ask neighbors. Let's do all of our diligence to make sure it's not something environmental or psychological.
Right, like a leak.
And over that first year, while they're doing this research, there isn't much activity at the ranch, save a couple of instances where there were some strange lights. So that first year is fairly uneventful, but what's important is that the NIDS researchers come to a conclusion that this did not seem like a hallucination. This did not seem like a something coming from, you know, a plant or water supply. This seemed like the Terry and his family were really experiencing something odd. They just didn't know what it was. One day, Terry.
Yo, how did they know they wasn't lying though? Like, did they not ever bring that up? They could be like, yo, they couldn't be lying.
And actually Gwen, who was helping him, were tagging some of the new calves, the new cows that had been born, putting these little tags in their ears. And so Gwen was there helping. And so Terry and Gwen, they tagged this new calf, put a yellow tag in its ear, and they move on and they're tagging other animals. And so for about 40 minutes, their eyes and their attention are not focused on this one calf or that one area of the ranch. They're tagging other animals, and then their dog that was with them starts growling and reacting in the direction of where this calf had been. And so Terry and Gwen turn around and they look and they don't see anything, and they start walking over. They find the calf that they had tagged about 40 minutes ago has been basically surgically dissected, and all that's left are its legs and its head.
That quick.
And in addition, the ear where that tag was had been removed. And so they immediately call over the NIDS researchers. So the NIDS veterinarian comes over and looks at the scene and just can't make sense of it, because the incisions on the calf were so well done that it looked like someone with real surgical expertise had done this on an operating table. There was no sign that this was done by a predator, and there was no blood anywhere. So this prompts a massive search of the property, because in many ways, this is what the NIDS researchers are looking for, are real occurrences of something that is highly strange that they can go investigate. And so all of the researchers and everybody there begins searching the property for whoever was responsible for this dissection of the cow. And they start searching the property, and the dogs, they had all these guard dogs that were kept at each of these observation posts that they had set up around the ranch as soon as the NIDS team had moved in. They were all looking in the same direction, all four of these four observation posts, and they're all cowering in the back of their cages, all looking in the same direction. And so they start making their way towards the tree line where all these dogs are looking, and they stop short when Terry says, "I see something in the tree." So they stop their car and they're looking, and in the tree is this massive wolf, this like wolf-like humanoid that's basically perched on a tree limb. And Terry takes out his rifle and he aims at the creature up in the tree, this huge creature. Everybody sees it. All the NIDS researchers are looking at this creature and they're like, "Oh my God, what is that?" Terry starts firing at this thing and it just disappears into the woods. And so the team charges into the woods, they fan out, and they pick up a couple of tracks of this huge thing that has like this massive footprint with these huge claws. But much like the wolf that had disappeared and the cattle that had suddenly disappeared when they went into the woods, they couldn't find any traces of this thing. But they did smell this horrible stench that Terry remembered smelling. It stuck with him that first day when that large wolf had come over on the very first day they were moving in. It was that same smell, but they couldn't find this huge animal. So dumbfounded, the NIDS researchers just go back to the property and no one can make sense of it. And they have the footprint and they have their own eyewitness testimony, but like they couldn't make sense of how something that big could just get away. And so over the following month, they're like searching the property and they're looking for any more signs of this huge creature or anything. The only thing they noticed is that the guard dogs consistently stayed in their kennels and did not want to come out. They were acting like they were kind of being hunted, and they were they were cowering quite a bit, and they were scared to go out in the open, but they couldn't find anything. So it was around this time that Terry and Gwen are kind of back to doing work around the ranch, and one day they're driving off to one section of the ranch and they pass by the corral where 4 of their prized bulls were. These are very expensive animals that are all in this enclosure, and so they drive past and they take a mental note that they're seeing these bulls in this enclosure. And they drive off to the other side of the ranch where they're doing some work, tagging animals and building fences, whatever it is they were doing. But when they come back and they round a corner where they're first able to see that corral of bulls again, they are like, where are they? Because the bulls were not in their enclosure and they weren't anywhere. And so they're panicked because these are very...
Wait, why don't they just put cameras up around the prop? Wait, what year is it? Hold up. Chat, what year is this? Does anyone know? Do they have cameras? I'm gonna late 90s. Oh, they would have cameras, but they wouldn't have like cameras to go up in a property, would they? Late nighters.
Expensive animals, and they run over, and Terry sees that the gates to the corral are still locked, but there's no bulls in there. There's no sign of a struggle or anything. And it just so happens that right next to the corral was this fairly small trailer that hadn't been used in years. In fact, it was literally wired shut. It was just sitting there. And Terry, just for whatever reason, runs over and looks in one of the windows. And inside of this tiny enclosure are these 4 bulls, completely calm, all crammed into this tiny trailer. They could barely fit. They're not fighting with each other or anything. They're just calmly sitting there as if they're in some kind of a trance. And Terry yells to Gwen, like, hey,
Someone's robbing them.
They're right here. And it like startles the bulls out of their trance. They start panicking and kicking, and they end up getting them out of this enclosure, and it takes them hours to finally round them up and get them back in the corral. But they're unharmed. But it is almost impossible to get even one bull into that small of an enclosure. It would take hours to maybe be successful at doing that. To get 4 bulls.
Yo, is that actually true, chat? Would it actually be really, really, really hard getting 4 bulls into a trailer? Is that really, really hard?
Into that enclosure was pretty much impossible. And to do it when they basically were calm after they were in there is also somewhat impossible. And it was important to note that Terry saw when he looked in the window that the only entrance to that trailer was wired shut still. It had not been undone. In fact, the cobwebs at the corner where the opening basically formed.
So they've been teleported in there.
The trailer, they were still intact, like it had not opened. And it made no sense how those bulls got in there. And so the NIDS researchers come over, and they can't make sense of it either. Upon further investigation, the NIDS researchers found that the bars of the corral that held the bulls, a section of it had been highly magnetized. And so while they're doing this research, trying to figure out if magnetic fields has anything to do with the strange occurrences at the ranch, 2 of the NIDS researchers were on the outskirts of the property using their compass to look for magnetic fields, and they started smelling. They both reported smelling that horrible metallic, like rotting smell that other people had reported smelling anytime they saw that large wolf creature. And when they started smelling it, their compass started to flitter and then pointed away from north towards wherever the smell was. And they remember thinking that they felt like they were being watched. And it went on for a few moments, and their compass didn't waver. It was aimed in the direction of the smell, and they're both on opposite sides, pointing in the same direction. And then at some point, the smell stops, and they stop feeling anxious, and the north arrows go back to the way they should have been. And then one of the most terrifying of all of the paranormal occurrences that happened at Skinwalker Ranch happened at the very end of 1997. 2 NIDS researchers were up on a ridgeline overlooking the homestead. Every night it became commonplace to basically position NIDS researchers all over the property to basically be on the lookout for weird things that are happening. And these 2 researchers are up on this ridge, kind of obscured and hidden, and they see this orange orb take shape right near the homestead. And one of them had infrared goggles, and so he looks down at the orb, and he can clearly make out that it's this oval-shaped opening that sounded an awful lot like what Terry had seen on his porch when he saw that humanoid creature crawling out of the portal into his property. Well, these 2 researchers are looking at this portal, and they see the same thing. They see this black human-like creature crawling out of this orange portal onto the ground, and then it starts running up the hill towards them. And they're like frozen with fear. They start smelling that horrible rot.
Fucking God, bro. Yo, if that fucking ran at me, I'm taking the gun on my hip and shooting myself, mate, because I know it's not going to kill that thing. And it's not getting me, bro. That's not getting me, bro. Nah, what is that?
Crawling out of this orange portal onto the ground, and then it starts running up the hill towards them.
Oh, that's a nightmare. Like, that's a fucking nightmare.
They start smelling that horrible rotting metallic smell as this big human-like creature bounds up the mountain, and they can hear the shale under its feet as it runs up, and it goes right past them, about 30 feet away from them. They're looking at
Wait, it goes right past them. What, is it blind?
and it just barrels past them at a full sprint up into the mountainside. The following year, in 1998, the activity on the ranch declined significantly. All they had was the occasional strange lights here and there, but for the most part, it was done. And in fact, even though NIDS remained on the property, by 2004, the research just wasn't amounting to anything, so they pulled the plug on the operation.
Okay.
They did have footage of a number of the lights that were seen, but again, no one's going to take a picture of some random lights and say, oh, there you go, proof. You know, they demonstrated that there were, you know, magnetic fields, and they have images of these calves that would reappear after looking like they'd had surgery done to them. They had hundreds of eyewitness reports. You know, they have all this information, but none of it was really definitive proof, which was very frustrating to Robert Bigelow, to Terry and his family. And the way they described it is they felt like they were dealing with an entity or a group of entities that were just consistently one step ahead of them, that they could catch glimpses of what they were doing, but it was never enough to really understand what was happening. They never felt like they were in control. It was always clear that this entity or these entities were in control of the situation.
Well, buddy, if I seen aliens coming out of a fucking portal, I'm gonna also think I ain't gonna be in control. They are gonna be one step ahead. Mate, it's aliens coming out of a fucking portal. They got a portal, bro. Of course they're gonna be ahead of us. Of course they're gonna be steps ahead. They could probably fucking read your mind.
And they never were in a good position to really record hard data or get good footage. Not to mention, this is 1998, this is the late 90s. No one just had, like, you know, an iPhone they can pull out and snap pictures. You had like real cameras. And so the best they could do was...
Yeah, yo, imagine Skinwalker Ranch in 2024, bro. You get some fucking idiot going, selfie! And then there you go, you got a picture of it. You got a picture of the fucking alien, dude.
Of light and some of the animals that had been mutilated. There's been numerous books put together by some of the people that were a part of this NIDS research team, and to this day they believe that what they saw was a result of some paranormal activity. And to this day, many people believe that this is one of...
Are aliens paranormal? I don't think aliens are paranormal. I think that's less paranormal and more fucking aliens. Like, bro, you got a portal. Portal's not paranormal, is it? Portal's aliens, bro.
The most credible instances of paranormal activity occurring. So I'd love to hear what you think in the comments, whether you think this is a total fact or a total hoax or somewhere in the middle. I'd love to hear about it in the comments. And if you want to get in touch with...
I know, bro. I need to do my, I need to put my detective cap on, look at all the evidence in front of me, all the file cases, and the photos and whatnot. I need to see the cows for myself so I can, you know, do my detective work and figure out. I feel like I'll be able to figure out, Chai, if I go there. Yo, should we book a trip to Skinwalker Ranch?